to the fifth episode of the live IndyCar Red Pill. Today it's a solo show. Didn't have any guests. Most people couldn't make it work that I wanted to ask. And then I told pretty much the other people I said, come on, just go home. We'll do a short show. Glasses so we don't see too much. So before we get going here, I do want to say to those of you coming in, welcome. If you're watching this live, thank you so much for watching. If you are watching it live, be sure to hit the like button because it'll keep too. That'll be awesome, and I appreciate the people who watch it taped as well. But regardless, on Fast Friday, if you're going to be at the track, get there early because I'm planning on doing a fan meetup around 10 a.m. So if you want to go to the SIK karting track and meet me, race against me, maybe beat me, we'll see. That would be some fun. I'll do a couple races since there's only about 8 carts that can go on track at once, or I think it's less than that. I think it's like 5 carts that can go on track at once. But one of my friends who works at SIK told me that they're going to have some fresh tires, so it's going to be a lot of grip, a lot of fun, and we get to be one of the first people to mess those carts up. So with that out of the way, again, yeah, Fast Friday's coming up. Thursday practice session, pretty much what we expected. In fact, exactly what we called yesterday because we did have our first wall contact of the month. Let's just lead with that right now. J.R. Hildebrand got into the wall coming out of turn number 3, skidded along the wall, and then parked the car on the inside of turn 4. Not a very big hit, certainly not very spectacular of an accident, but I did win a shiny 25-cent piece from Mr. Brody Banta, who was on the show last night as one of our panelists. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we made that bet on air, but if not, sports gambling is legal in Indiana now or something like that, so statute of limitations is all up. Something that's fairly interesting about that crash I wanted to point out, though, to the viewers here is one of the, I guess you could say, a safety aspect of this universal Aero kit that I think people haven't really pointed out yet, but I'm going to go ahead and point it out. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the safety improvements, and to imply it's an improvement implies it's something new. No, it's not really. It's the fact that they moved the radiators forward in the side pod, giving a much more Coke bottle shape. In fact, let me show you. I've got this new Simon Pagino diecast that I bought today, and this is what I'm talking about, the nice full-length side pods, right? So people have been talking about that quite a bit, but they haven't really been talking about something that I find very important about the fact that they've moved these side pods forward, is the fact that not only have they done this, but they've solved one of the principal problems of the DW12 chassis, something that has been plaguing the car ever since it debuted in 2012, and that is the weight distribution. Now, a lot with as much crap as was back here, starting in 2012 with not only the bumpers, but you also had full-length side pods plus the radiators back here, not just these wheel covers that essentially cut the drag of the car. You had, I think, over 60% of the weight rearward of the car, of course, rear engine car as well. That doesn't help the weight distribution all that much, and you didn't have very much on the front. So what does that mean? Well, that means if you screw up going into a corner, what's going to happen is the back end is going to spin around, and if it gets all the way around, you go in nose first. We saw that a few times last year. The most obviously graphic example of that was Sebastian Bourdais' massive accident on pole day last year. But there were a couple more examples of that. Spencer Pigot in turn 2, Buddy Lazier in turn 2 in the race. All cars losing the back end, spinning around. Joseph Newgarden in practice, spinning around and catching the front of the car on the wall. Obviously, varying degrees of that. But with the Hildebrand crash and some of the let's say moments I saw earlier today, mainly with the Rahal team, it seems that this car with the new Universal Aero kit is much more susceptible to push. Now, of course, I mentioned, I believe, chatting with Steve last night, most of the aerodynamic downforce, now we're not talking about ground effects here, we're talking just straight aero, is produced on the front. Obviously, look how much bigger the front wing is than the rear wing. That is going to essentially create a push condition, and that's what we're seeing quite a bit of, and especially in traffic. So with the J.R. Hildebrand accident, we had a slower car in the lead pack. Hildebrand was actually running with the Andretti cars. It was looking like he was probably going to put up a big time. The pack had just come out of the pits, and I believe Connor Daly was the car directly in front of him. We'll talk about more about Connor Daly here in a second. But Daly, I believe, pulled out of the pits in front of JR going into turn three. JR got the dirty air on his front wing, which of course produces the most of that aerodynamic cornering downforce, and away the front end went. Barely clipped the wall. I mean, it was a very, I mean, it wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't a big hit because there's no such thing as a small hit in Indianapolis, but in terms of a hit at Indianapolis, it was about as small as it could possibly be. And again, he skidded along the wall. It was okay. But I think that is something that not a lot of people have pointed out, and I'm going to point out here, is that that was very much a 2011 style crash. And ironically enough, a lot of people have been talking about, oh, well, Hildebrand's in the wall in four again. And of course, that me saying it's a 2011 style crash will certainly bring up those kind of memories. But I would say that I'm mentioning that more because I think, again, even though we're seeing very close packs of cars, I think we're going to see a very 2011, 2010 style race where passing is going to be a bit of a premium. It seems like still, despite the fact that I won't say, or I will say that we've seen the rest of the pack catch up much more. I said the last 2 days that I think it's only going to be a 10-car race between the 6 Andrettis and the 4 Penske's. It looks like maybe the Schmidt cars, the 4 plus the Michael Shank car, and the Ganassi cars may be up there as well. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe Tony Kanaan could throw a wrench into that. Apparently the quality's going down. I don't know. I can't help the Wi-Fi. So yeah, I think we're going to see a very 2011, 2010 style race. That's not going to change very much. So let's talk about, or that is going to be a big change, but it's going to actually be more of an old style Indy 500 than the new style. I don't know if people are going to like it, but that's what it's going to be. Or I could be completely wrong. It's going to look exactly like it did last year. I think a lot of people would be happy with that. So, the top 10 in practice. Now, a lot of this doesn't mean a whole lot because, again, so many people had toes. If there weren't if there was 2 or 3 cars out there, there just simply isn't enough space to not get some kind of a draft advantage out there. So a lot of these times you can take them or leave them because most of these drivers are not on the no-toe list, but I guess in terms of race pace, maybe, I don't know. Graham Rahal actually led. We were talking about him yesterday as the 34th slowest driver. I think he heard you because he decided to go first. The only driver in the 226 mile per hour range. Then we go down to 225 miles an hour. Tony Kanaan, who's been fast all month. Marco Andretti, who's been fast all month. And Ed Carpenter sneaking up into there. Let me tell you, the Ed Carpenter cars, including Danica, are starting to show some pace. So I think they're going to be there in qualifying, fighting for that Fast 9. It looks like it's going to be like a 15 to 17 car fight for that Fast 9. Saturday is going to be really crazy. Then we go down into the 224 mile an hour range. Fifth on the board is Sage Karam for Dreyer Reinbold. Dreyer Reinbold cars have been very fast. If Hildebrand had not hit the wall, he probably would be up in the top 10 as well because I think he was about to put up a big number. Then we go to Joseph Newgarden in 6, 224 miles an hour. Zachary Clayman DeMello at 244. Wow, that would have been a big number. 224 miles an hour. That's fairly interesting as well because I even said yesterday, kind of bad of me to say, but I said Zachary Clayman to back row or Zachary Clayman to bubble. Maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. It looks like Coyne is starting to find something, at least with Clayman DeMello and Bourdais, and to a certain extent Pippa. Daly, on the other hand, we'll talk about here in a second. Elio Castroneves, also in the 224 mile an hour range, was 8th. 9th was Spencer Pigot, 224 miles an hour. Gabby Chavez, rounding out the top 10 at 224 miles an hour. And then just to round out the 224 mile an hour drivers, we had Simon Pagenaud, 224.1. Then Scott Dixon, 12th, Power, 13th, Leist, 14th. So pretty much mostly expected up there. And again, there were some people who trimmed today, but the problem is It seems as though the people who trimmed didn't really run in traffic. Guys trimmed out today were like Bourdais and Power and a few other drivers. Now let's look at the bottom half of the field because that's where the real I guess the real cat's pajamas is made. Does that make any sense? I'm pretty tired. We have at the bottom, and I'm going to read from the bottom up to, let's say, 27th. I'll go with 27th. Zach Veach, who did 106 laps today, was lowest at 224 or 221.343, and just for comparison, the fastest no toe speed was Will Power at 223 miles an hour. Now we don't have access to the no toe speed. It's pretty much what people are willing to report. It's interesting. Anyway, Connor Daly was 34th. Again, Connor Daly for the Tom Burns Racing Associated Dale Coyne car, again at the bottom. And I'm telling you, when he tried to do a qualifying sim today, I watched his lap speeds, 217 miles an hour. That's 5 miles per hour off Will Power's top no-toe time of the day. So he's in trouble, I think. Takuma Sato, the defending Indianapolis 500 winner, 221.7 miles an hour, 89 laps completed, the same as Connor Daly. But Sato, I don't think even attempted to do a single car run today, mostly traffic running for him. Pippa Mann in 32nd position, 222.1 miles an hour. 31st, James Hinchcliffe, 222.1 miles an hour, same as Pippa Mann. So again, I mentioned this all the way back when I reviewed the test. I'm not entirely sure the Schmidt cars are safe, and it looks like Hinchcliffe is the one struggling out of that team, but then again, he could be working on race setup. Who knows? 30th, Danica Patrick. Now, this is interesting because she did a 222.26, but in single car running, she did a few qual sims herself. She did 221.6, I think, from memory. So, and if you look at compare that to Will Power's time, only 2 miles an hour off of that, and only and like 3 or 4 miles an hour faster than the slower guys like Connor Daly. So I think Danica is going to be more than safe. 29th place, James Davison, who did a 222 mile an hour lap. But I think that Davison may be in that conversation as well on bump day. We've kind of been thinking that maybe he's a shoe-in. I'm not so sure he's a shoe-in. Then we've got Stephen Wilson in 28th position. Again, he's a guy who's new to the Andretti team, so there is a bit of a question there. But he's been doing a lot of traffic running. It's kind of interesting. We'll see. I think Stephen Wilson, if he gets into the race, is really going to surprise a lot of people because I've been very impressed with what he's been doing. And then 27th, Max Chilton in the second Carlin Racing effort, 222.667 miles an hour. I think once you get up to about 27th, you're probably safe. But just for comparison's sake, Charlie Kimball was 21st overall at 223.34 or 324 miles an hour, and I believe he did that 223 without a toe. So I think he's like third or fourth on the board of a no toe, which is very interesting. So I think I've pretty much covered everything. I've covered the racing, I've covered the qualifying, I covered the crash. So let's open it up to some questions from the chat. I'm gonna try to take too long today, especially since we don't have any guests. But if you want to ask me anything about the qualifying or about the practice, go ahead and shoot, and then I'll see what we got. So let's see. People are talking about Milwaukee Mile and Elkhart Lake. I wish they were both on the schedule. Zanardi would top the no-toe timesheets. That's an interesting hot take. Biggest surprises of the day, good or bad? I think the surprise was that J.R. Hildebrand was the first one to hit the wall. That was fairly interesting on that one. I would say that the surprise is maybe not today, but at least the week so far is the fact that Carlin Racing has shown a lot of pace relative to the field. I think we were a little bit worried about Carlin's pace, but they've been fairly fast and fairly consistent, so it's fairly interesting. Do you think any bumped cars show up at Texas? Yeah, if they're full season cars. Will the pole be 230 miles an hour? I'm not so sure. I said 231 miles an hour as my poll prediction early, and we'll see tomorrow. But I feel like it's going to be around 228, 229 miles an hour. I think 230 is maybe pushing it, though. Again, remember my first call was 231, so we'll see what a hot take that was. Do you think? What do you think will be the fastest speed on pole day? I already answered that. Yeah, people are saying 228. Wonder how boost will affect handling. It's probably going to make them push more. Again, we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of cars in the wall tomorrow. I think it's going to be carnage tomorrow. Assuming the weather doesn't affect things, there's a little bit of question about that. But again, we saw a preview of that today with cars almost pushing into the wall. And something that happens on Fast Friday that's kind of funny is that everybody gets the qualifying boost, but then they go out there and run in big packs anyway, and usually that leads to trouble. And it happened once again, or it usually happens every year. How much is the qualifying boost? The qualifying boost is, we talked about this last night briefly, I'll touch on it again. There's a misnomer that it's the road course boost, which is not true. The road course boost gets them around about 800 horsepower. It's actually a lower boost pressure, but slightly higher than they normally have on the ovals. I think they have about 650 horsepower on the ovals right now. It boosts them to about 700, gives them 50 to 80 hour. It's a question. Who do you think gets bumps? Says Hunter Kraus. I think Connor Daly's absolutely going to be one of them. The other people, I think it's going to come from Davison, Kaiser, and Clayman DeMello. And that's assuming that there isn't a big name in the wall or struggling. We just don't know. Let's see. Why don't we just allow teams to run as much boost as they want? I agree with that to a certain extent. I think they just need to set the boost level at a certain number and then just keep it that way for the entire month. If you want them to run 30 miles an hour, they should be able to run 230 from day one to the race day, as far as I'm concerned. By the way, 107 people watching right now, but only 32 likes. Let's change that. Thanks. But what's interesting is Sebastian Bourdais was, I believe, second on the no toe times. So they've found something. They're just not showing it yet. So I think they'll be all right. I think they'll be all right. Let's see. Going into and coming out of the turns. Oh, he's talking about Marco. Yeah, Marco. I think if the race happened tomorrow, it would be between Marco and Elio for the win. I think. Frisky Nixon, my good pal, Frisky Nixon. Shout out to him. He's a good YouTuber. Odds of a flip occurring. I'd say they're pretty low. This car, the way it is now, especially with the flip flaps on the rear attenuator, feel like it would be very unlikely that we'd have a flip. At least not in qualifying. I'd say in the race it's always a possibility with open wheel cars. You're always going to have that. There was one last year, and there'll probably be another one very soon. It just depends. It honestly just depends. As Paul Page says, the fates strike at random, and that is very much the case for Indianapolis. Do you think Karam will go full time again at any point? Yeah, sure. I think I was just talking about this with someone else today. That I think yeah, if Dreyer and Reinbold goes full time, they will choose Karam probably. I like to see them both bring both cars. I think JR needs another shot at full time because I kind of feel like he got screwed out of that Fuzzy's seat. But does it look like Andretti is struggling? No, no. I think they're just working on race setups. I think it's kind of like the overconfidence is their weakness. I'm a little bit worried they're overconfident. But their cars look very fast in traffic, and one of the few teams that can actually pass people in traffic. So that's interesting. How much will Aaron Rodgers will show? How much will ABC show Aaron Rodgers and the wives during the race? Very much. Aaron Rodgers they'll probably do what they did at Daytona with him and show him at the start and show him when Danica crashes, pretty much. But the wives, they always do the wives. It's annoying. Will the packs be larger this year with the new Universal Aero kit? I'd say no. I would say that the packs are actually going to be smaller. They're going to break up much quicker. It seems like the guys at the front of the pack can hang together, but once you get about 6 or 7 cars back, everybody starts spacing out more and more and more, I think we're going to see a lot of lap traffic during the 500, especially if it becomes a race where handling's at a premium. I think we're going to have some trouble. Where will Danica finish? Again, I've said this to everybody that's asked. Unremarkable day, 14th. She'll complete all the laps. She'll McLaren IndyCar is good for the sport. Yeah. Nah, that's not a question. That's a pretty easy one. Make your prediction. Lap one crash. Yeah, yeah, we're due. There hasn't been one since 2015, so then there's a lot of Chargers in this field this year. I think there's going to be a crash. JR to sports cars? No, I think JR wants to be here, and I think he's going to be here as long as he can possibly hang. Any full time WC drivers you'd like to see? Yeah, Neil Yanni. Uh, Winner predictions. I've said this a few times. I'll say it again. Elio. Elio's gonna win. Indy sucks. Why are you here? Well, didn't the 14th finisher last year crash out? No, I don't think so. I think there was about 20 or 25 cars that finished last year. Uh, will Andretti or Power win? I don't think either of them will win. Will Power? Hey, he seems like one of those snake-bitten drivers at the speedway, so I don't think he'll win. Rookie of the year, that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. Let's think about this. I thought before the month of May that the shoe-in was Pietro Fittipaldi, but we know how that went. I'm gonna say, well, it's probably gonna be Wickens. Wickens is probably